Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 HOSPO Health podcast. I'm Sherri Ring. I'm the Chief Happiness Officer for the Tasmanian Hospitality Association, and I'm joined this season by none other than the former Premier of Tasmania, Peter Gutwein. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Sherri, and look, thanks for inviting me. I am so thrilled to be a part of these conversations where we're going to hear stories that are going to teach us, inspire us. I think they'll make us laugh and probably make us cry as well. But it's great to be a part of it. Let's get on with it.
Let's go. Did you know that people who embrace failure are twice as likely to drive innovation and achieve higher professional satisfaction? In this episode, we reflect on the power of learning from setbacks and the valuable insights that come from challenging moments. Our guest, Robert Clifford, founder and chairman of Incat, took a backyard boat building operation and turned it into a global leader in high-speed ferry manufacturing. Robert reflects on his own journey, the challenges of pioneering the high-speed vehicle passenger ferry industry, and how turning obstacles into opportunities has provided the foundation for both personal and industry-wide growth. Welcome, Robert.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here, Robert. And I should disclose, I do work closely with Robert and with Incat over time. I've built a strong relationship with Robert. I do want to say this, Robert, and leading into it. You are one of the few people that I've ever met in my life, and I've met a lot, that can actually see the future. Since you knocked on my door 6 to 9 months after I left the role as Premier, and we started talking about what you thought was going to happen in the electric ship industry, you've been spot on. And in fact, you've been an innovator and a leader. And in fact, the world is now waking up to what you saw about 5 to 10 years ago. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, look, I don't know about seeing the future, but I certainly try to predict what we're going to be doing in the next 10 to 20 years.
Well, Robert, look, let me start by asking the first question. What was the greatest challenge you faced in growing Incat, and how did you overcome it?
Well, the greatest challenge is always finance. When the bridge was restored, everybody assumes that we made a lot of money out of the bridge. The reality is that we actually entered the bridge exercise owing no money. And at the end of it, I built 3 ships actually, and only paid for 2. So I had a massive overdraft at the end of the exercise, and that was a bit of a problem.
It's certainly a challenge. How much beer did you sell when the ferry was running, or you're running the ferry service across the river?
Never did calculate how many barrels we sold for the period, but the best week was 56 barrels. 18-gallon kegs.
What? That's brilliant. Robert, can you share a time when a failure led to an unexpected success in your career?
Well, again, referring to the days of the bridge, when it was restored, I had this brilliant idea that I was going to introduce ferries to Sydney Harbour. Sydney Harbour at the time had a fleet of antiquated ferries which were struggling. And I thought I was going to go up there and show them all that we'd learnt over the last 3 years with new boats, new technology, etc. And I introduced the first catamaran to Sydney Harbour. Well, they didn't want to know about it. The authorities didn't want to know. The Port Authority, the Transport Authority, the local idea people didn't want to know. So it was a massive failure. I just had nothing to do. So I actually went to Queensland and convinced an operator up there to take a catamaran. And indeed, that was very successful. It sort of forced me to go to Queensland and look for a market for the ferries. And we actually introduced fast ferries to the Barrier Reef. Before that, you could only get to the Barrier Reef on an old fishing boat or something like that, and it'd take all day to get there and all night to get back. So the tourist industry in Queensland, we introduced the fast ferries to operate to the reef.
Wow. Well, thank you, because I've been on one of those. That was a great, one of my favourite trips, actually.
Yeah, it's a very successful service today, but most people don't understand that we actually were instigators of that service.
Yeah. And so from that failure, are there times throughout your business career that you nearly lost everything?
Oh, a number of times actually. Having a massive overdraft at the end of the bridge restore was a problem. I had to go to a well-known Hobart private lender to see us through because the banks wouldn't lend me any more money. We've had a couple of instances where money's been very short. Consequently, today we're very cautious with what we do with our money.
Yeah, of course.
Now, what personal qualities do you believe were most important in transforming Incat into a global leader?
Probably you touched on it by, I certainly can't see the future, but we do try to understand where the marine industry is going. And of course, being involved in the marine industry for the last 50 years or so, I've got a rough idea of what customers want and need. And so perseverance, talking to customers, convincing them that they need new product, etc., is pretty important.
And I might just throw in there, because a lot of our listeners won't have heard about the ship that you're building at the moment, which is the largest electric ferry in the world. Do you want to just explain just how many people that'll carry and where it's going to go?
That ship's going to be running a 35-mile route across the River Plate in Argentina and Europe, between Uruguay and Argentina. It's relatively shallow water, which means it's a slightly unusual ship. It will carry 2,100 passengers. It's got a massive duty-free shop on board because the owner makes most of his revenue out of duty-free between the two countries. And he's a very good customer of ours. He's bought 8 ships off us in the past. This is ship number 9. And he's a visionary. He's actually one of my favourite people in the world because he and I get on quite well. We understand each other, and I try to build better ships for him, and he tries to buy more.
Sounds like the perfect customer. And so was that your idea or his, the electric ship?
The electric ship was his idea. It was going to be LNG powered, but LNG has its own issues. The engines are very heavy. The fuel is not as friendly as people sometimes believe it is. It's not as bad as diesel, but it is not much better. And he came to me with the idea of electric. When he first came to me, we were building him an LNG ship. And he said to me, next ship will be electric. And he doesn't speak English, so this is all through an interpreter. So it took me about 15 minutes to realise that he was talking about the ship we'd already started to build, not the next ship. So we had a massive problem of cancelling all the engines and machinery and starting again. So consequently, that was a massive challenge. But he's a visionary. He understands that electric is necessary to satisfy his customers, his governments that he's dealing with, etc. And I'm sure he's absolutely right.
Yeah, and wow, you're a visionary to be producing that. So what is that the future?
There's no doubt about it that the future for any ship that's operating under 100 miles today is highly likely in future to be electric. Because all the other alternatives are much more difficult and environmentally less friendly, etc. Now, batteries are improving at such a rapid rate that it's only a matter of maybe 4 or 5 years only before ships of 200 miles will be perfectly capable of being electric. So that means that we have a massive market. Some 4,000 or 5,000 ships have to be changed to electric. Now, that's of the big market. Now, places like Sydney Harbour, for example, there's 50 ships on Sydney Harbour today that are fossil-fuelled. Most of them are catamarans, incidentally, after my failure there. Now 30 of them are catamarans, at least. And it's a market like Sydney is only 50 ships, but then there's another 50 for the Barrier Reef. So there's at least 100, 150 ships in Australia that need to be electric, small ones. Well, if you extrapolate that around the world, that's at least 1,000 Sydney Harbour-sized ferries. Now, what we're building at the moment is bigger than that. It's like English Channel-sized ferries and the Baltic Sea-sized ferries. So there's another 1,000 or 2,000 of those ships needed in the world. Now, these are not my numbers. These are relatively well understood predictions of what's going to be necessary. So, with full confidence, of course, I'm working in that direction.
Robert, how do you stay authentic while navigating the pressures of a highly competitive industry?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by authentic, but certainly I understand the industry reasonably well. Some people in the industry understand me, which helps. So I spend a lot of time travelling around the world, meeting customers, talking to potential customers and existing customers. So looking around and keeping abreast of the latest technology is what I do.
And leading in from that, or on from that, you've always been an innovator. You've always been at the front of the curve. What advice would you give to new innovators who are looking to start up, maybe with limited resources, but wanting to get on and build a business?
Well, I guess be bold, be brave and bold, because you don't get anywhere sitting back and waiting for somebody else to come up and find the solutions. You have to find the solutions yourself, and you have to look around a little bit and see how you do it. I don't really know all the answers. There's no doubt about that. But I do try to find the solutions and work towards them.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's incredible what you've achieved. Robert, we have a quick fire 5 questions to finish off our podcast. So we ask you 5 quick questions with 5 quick answers. The first one is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and how's it shaped your journey in life?
Well, my father once told me that when we were struggling for money, and this is going back a long time ago, he said, always make sure you pay the bank. And he's absolutely right. Even if you don't put all the other creditors' name in the hat, at least pay the bank.
Pay the bank.
Man's got to be paid. Now, what's a misconception about you that you wish people understood?
Well, I touched on that a little while ago, that people assume that we made a massive start with the ferry industry. We did. It was a very exciting time and busy time, but we didn't make any money out of it. It was basically break even at the end of the day. And so we probably struggled the first 2 years after the bridge was restored to get established. And eventually I had a man knock on my door and said, I want to buy a catamaran. But my daughter actually, when she was quite small, used to say, Dad, why don't you work? Because she'd see me just waiting by the telephone, effectively, waiting for the future.
That's a great answer. What personal qualities do you believe were most important in transforming Incat into a global leader?
I think innovation, staying ahead of the curve. Our ships are always a considerable advancement on the opposition ships and what other ships are available today. And we have to try and stay there. We've just had a meeting this morning, actually, looking at the design of future boats, etc., and discussing where we think the market's going in the next year or two.
Now, if you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to a younger Robert Clifford?
Oh, that's a pretty hard question, but perseverance, I think. You've just got to hang in there and have an open mind on, I find that a hard one to answer because I don't.
I think that's a good answer, though. I mean, you only have to look at the Kentucky Fried Chicken guy.
Well, I think the 18-year-old Robert Clifford wouldn't take any notice of me anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Robert, how do you want to be remembered? What do you feel like is your legacy, in both personally and professionally?
Well, I think the next 10 years, if I last that long, is extremely interesting because I'd like to be remembered as the person who really transformed shipping into the next generation of ships being electric. We didn't invent electricity. We didn't invent electric ships. But certainly to take it forward and make electric battery-powered ships into the mainstream would be my ambition.
Yeah, amazing.
And now finish off with, what's a book, film or experience that profoundly influenced your outlook on life or work?
Well, it's not totally relevant, but I've always been a seaman, if you like. I spent most of my life on the water, and I saw a film, The Cruel Sea, and I reckon I saw that film probably 3 or 4 times. And now that was a war film, and it was all about people, dying for their country, etc. Nothing to do with manufacturing, but it's certainly I was moved by that film.
Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. I actually have about 100 more questions I'd love to ask you. You are, you're what you've achieved, and as an innovator, it's absolutely fascinating, and you're amazing. So, thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful having you.
Thank you,
Robert. It's been great. And you might not agree with me that you can see into the future, but I do think that you can, and you're going to turn the world on its head with electric shipping.
Yeah, incredible.
Well, thanks for that. There's no doubt about that. Shipping is going to change massively in the next few years.